The city of Denver projects it will now have to spend tens of millions of dollars less on migrants.
As the number of people here arriving decreases, the city is also going to cut some of its services. 9 News reporter Mark Salinger explains.
$180 million. That's how much Denver Mayor Mike Johnson thought the migrant crisis could cost the city this year. Now that number is changing. New projections announced by the mayor today show Denver now expects to spend $120 million on migrants this year. As fewer migrants arrive in the city, Denver is closing 4 hotel shelters, 1 per week over the next 4 weeks. The city is also changing the way it provides some services. Their focus will now be on case management to get people housing and work.
It does feel like a turning point for us. I think it seems like the challenge kept getting harder and harder. It was almost if the federal government wanted to prove that they could make the hill steeper and steeper at every moment, thinking that we would give up.
For some context, Denver has spent about $58 million on migrants since December of 2022. If these new projections hold, they could spend double that amount this year. In Denver, I'm Mark Salinger, 9 News.
Denver has already announced budget cuts to the DMV and Parks and Rec in order to fund migrant services, and the city's moved over about $10 million from reserve funds.
Let's take a live look at Ball Arena in downtown Denver. The Avalanche have the night off. The Nuggets are hosting the Sacramento Kings. We're going to get highlights from the game coming up in sports. If you're walking to and from, not too bad, Kathy. Sometimes it's cold.
And it was a beautiful night, Kim. Look at our sunset tonight. So many of our viewers are sharing the view. It almost doesn't even look real with that big, beautiful cloud out there this evening. Sun went down at 5:49 and really almost looked like a big spaceship out there with lots of color in the underbelly of those clouds. We have cooled back to 32 degrees and temperatures today soared into the 50s. And this is just the beginning of a warm weather trend that'll get us up into record territory by the time we hit the weekend. It's not entirely calm out there. Winds are pretty gusty over some of the higher passes, so we're watching that. But we're actually in between storms, one that will bring some beneficial rain to Texas, dealing with multiple wildfires, and the next system on the way from the northwest. It won't be here until Saturday. We'll start to see the snow fly in the mountains on Saturday, but Denver stays dry until then. Temperatures are comfortable this evening, and coming up, we're going to have just that wonderful weather forecast through the next few days, but that weekend storm is looming out there. We'll talk more about the arrival, the timing, and the effects of that storm and what it means for your weekend coming up.
Car crashed into a Starbucks in Lakewood tonight. It's about 6:30 at West 10th and Wadsworth. Lakewood police say no one was seriously hurt in this. Driver stayed on the scene. Cause of the crash is under investigation.
The man who kidnapped 2 hikers at gunpoint in Lakewood will spend more than 3 decades in prison.
There's a guy, looks like he's holding up a couple. Maybe he has a gun or a knife or something. This is not good.
That's a 911 call from a runner who saw it happen near Bear Creek Lake Park back in June of 2022. 74-year-old Carrie Inslee confronted a couple with a gun, then put a leash around the woman's neck. When deputies arrived, he threatened them with a stun gun. Earlier this year, Inslee pleaded guilty to attempted murder. A judge sentenced him today to 35 years in prison.
It could take months to repair the Martin Luther King Jr. statue in City Park. So police have found the 3 stolen pieces. They were at a scrapyard. Now they're looking for 2 suspects in connection with the thefts. Today, the artist behind the statue says he believes it'll take 3 months to restore that work. Investigators have said they think the thieves just wanted the metal for money, scrap heap stuff. They don't think it was a hate crime. Former state rep Wilma Webb said that crime disrespected our history.
The arts matter to our telling our story as people, as groups of people, as the city, as the state, as the nation, and the world. So with that, all of these people have various components of our society have responded, and that's a good thing.
Along with the repairs, organizers want to add some more security and lighting around the statue.
Lakewood police arrested the driver accused in a hit-and-run crash that killed the local fencer a few days ago. We shared more about this story on 9 News at 9 last night. Police say Jimmy Lee Chavez hit 29-year-old Terry Endall last Friday at the intersection of Kipling Street and West 23rd Avenue. Endall was well known in Colorado's fencing community. Investigators say the car Chavez was driving, a 2014 Camaro, is still missing. And we now know the person shot and killed at a Denver cemetery last weekend was a 16-year-old boy. The medical examiner's office identified him as Elias Tinajero. The teen was found Saturday in Fairmount Cemetery near Quebec and Alameda. No arrests have been made. If you have any information, call police and call Denver Metro Crime Stoppers.
Victim advocates are asking state legislators for help to make up the difference from dwindling federal funds for victim services. The Colorado Division of Criminal Justice says they're expecting a 45% cut in funding for the Victims of Crime Act, VOCA. Right now, VOCA funds more than 200 programs statewide that serve 175,000 people. Today, legislators introduced a ballot measure that voters will decide on. It would add an excise tax of 11% on guns. The revenue would provide a source of state funding for victim services, as well as funding mass tragedy response, gun violence prevention, and school safety.
It's National Eating Disorder Awareness Week. While 29 million people in the U.S. will experience an eating disorder, getting treatment isn't always easy, and survivors say their treatment isn't always helpful.
Now, state legislators are considering setting minimum standards of care for that eating disorder treatment and recovery. 9 News reporter Rachel Krause explains why some survivors believe this is so needed.
Nearly 1 in 10 people will experience an eating disorder in their lifetime. Erin Harrop is one of them.
I had an eating disorder that emerged in childhood and then didn't get diagnosed until I was 15 years old.
They weren't able to access specialized treatment until they were 22. Even then, the treatment wasn't always helpful. Sometimes, in their experience, it can make an eating disorder even worse.
I was allowed to go days without eating, without being supplemented. The processes of stripping down and being weighed in very little clothing or no clothing at all for some people, having those weights be done publicly, right? Where you're standing in line with your peers all in your gowns or underwear or whatever it is that they have you.
On top of supervised showers and trips to the bathroom, they often saw bias and stigma from providers. These are all issues that Senate Bill 117 aims to tackle. Vincent Atchity with Mental Health Colorado says this bill would put in place standards of care for eating disorder treatment programs.
Until now, there have been no such thing as formalized standards of care in those settings.
Dr. Jennifer Hagman, medical director of Children's Hospital Colorado's Eating Disorders Program, says they see a lot of kids with severe eating disorders coming in need of help. And she knows it can be hard to access care at any age.
But the rates are high, and it really, I think it's part of why I think these bills are so important at the legislative level, because it really brings awareness to just how serious these problems are and truly the challenges that people have finding care.
Harrop says not every experience they had in treatment was harmful. They say this bill is critical to make care more accessible and not just helpful, but healing.
It's really hard work to do. It's a very delicate balance, but I do think that this legislation is a start.
Senate Bill 117 moved out of committee earlier today. It's now headed over to appropriations. That's where supporters say the bill could face some hiccups due to the administrative cost of some of these new practices being put in place. Eating disorder legislation did hit a similar road bump over in appropriations last year. Advocates say they're hopeful that lawmakers will recognize the need for these changes despite the cost.
Pretty stark and pretty startling to hear what actually goes on in some of these programs.
Yeah, they can be absolutely harrowing experience, can really traumatize a lot of the people who are already dealing with such a tough time.
Rachel Krause, thank you. Gray wolves have been getting comfy, spreading out in Colorado. I want to show you the latest map from CPW. This is using GPS collar data collected from the 10 wolves released recently. 2 wolves in North Park that migrated down from Wyoming are tracked as well. They've made it into Larimer County. Wolves have also gone south into Garfield, Eagle, and Summit counties. I'll give you a comparison to last month's map showing where they've moved. Wolves have spread out pretty much in every direction since then.